reaction. CTV's Jeremie Charron is in Ottawa for us today. Jeremy, so let's talk about both of these. Again, both of these speeches and talks happening at the same time. Pierre Poilievre offering a lot of detail, in particular, about the Conservative plan. There certainly feels like we just talked to Tom Mulcair, some of the overlap, in particular with defense, but had some specific proposals as well about how he would lay out the relationship between Canada and the U.S.
Yeah, exactly, Matt. I think this is what many have been calling for Poilievre to do for a long time, including, senior Conservative strategists who have no direct ties to Poilievre, but, longtime Conservatives have been calling for exactly this for some time. He was, he mentioned Trump by name, and you talked about it earlier. Perhaps some will say that he should have mentioned him more, but mentioned Trump by name, addressed, specific comments and allegations made by U.S. President Donald Trump, denounced 51st state comments, was clearer than we have heard him ever be on Canada-U.S. relations, and outlined clear, definitive things he believes should be addressed moving forward in that relationship between, Canada and the U.S. And so I think this was a bit of a shift, if you will, a bit of a new page, if you will, for Mr. Poilievre in, again, addressing specifically what many have been calling for him to do for some time when it comes to Canada-U.S. relations. So, interested to see where he goes from here and whether we continue to see, discussion on Mr. Poilievre's side. Like, he talked about specific things, and you touched on them too, Matt, but when it comes to steel and auto tariffs, he talked about the auto sector as a whole, trying to create or recreate almost and bring back some of the North American auto sector that has been fractured in the face of U.S. President Donald Trump's tariff, trying to shy away from Asian markets when it comes to autos and EVs, and continue to work together with our American partners in that aspect. He talked about defense, and he talked about the Arctic. He talked about a lot of things in the context of Canada-U.S. relations that we have not heard him talk about in a long time. So there's a lot to digest there, Matt. But I think overall, he offered up a lot of things that we have not heard from Mr. Poilievre yet, and things that many have been calling for some time. What is the impact is the big question, moving ahead. These comments and this speech from Mr. Poilievre comes at a time when, a lot of public opinion polls are showing a bit of a widening of the gap between party popularity, between the Liberals and Conservatives, not just leadership popularity. We've known for some time that Mark Carney is polls significantly higher than Mr. Poilievre when it comes to personal popularity, but their party's brands, there is a bit of a gap that is widening between the Liberals and the Conservatives. So the big question is whether or not this speech lands with people, or whether, it will be too little too late, in a sense. There are a lot of things here that he talked about that I found myself watching and thinking, these are things that could have been addressed during the election campaign that were topical even then, right? So I think that's maybe the big question, is whether or not this lands with Canadians.
Yeah, and we'll see. And didn't, he was critical in the government at spots, but wasn't necessarily over the top like we have seen him in the past. So we'll see if it does lead to any collaboration, partially, at least at this point, because you mentioned, the latest Angus Reid survey, the latest Angus Reid poll has them 13 points apart. The Liberals with a 13-point lead. So we'll see. The other curious part, let me just go, Jeremy, too, as well, to Dominic LeBlanc. We didn't listen to the entire chat that he had in Toronto today, but is confirming that he is going to meet with Jamieson Greer late next week. Not unsurprising. We have heard that was necessarily going to be the case, but these conversations are continuing leading up to the official review of CUSMA.
Yeah, interesting to hear from Mr. LeBlanc on the Supreme Court's decision as well. He had posted something on social media as a result of that decision, but offering up a little bit more there, in that, Canada's position had always been that those tariffs were being imposed unlawfully. But yeah, a little bit of insight into the approach that he's looking to take. I think the Canadian side is being very careful as it tries to go into these negotiations, does not want to offer too much publicly, and is trying to leave as much as they can to the negotiating table. But certainly we'll be, watching closely to see, what comes of that discussion with Trade Representative Jamieson Greer next week, Matt.
Yeah. Okay, CTV's Jeremie Charron live in our Ottawa Bureau for us this afternoon. Thanks, Jeremy, for this.
Yeah, anytime, Matt.